Hello, my name's the Retro Gaming Goose, and here's my face. I don't often put my face out there. I think the last time my face was on screen was probably the Tears of the Kingdom live stream, which was, well, back when it was on release day, I think, actually. So yeah, I thought for this series I would go back again and put my face out there, just because there's a game series I really want to talk about. Now, one of my favourite game series of all time ever, and probably not justifiably, is the Turok series. I absolutely love the Turok series. I've played every single game from Turok 1 on the Nintendo 64, Turok 2, Turok 3, which I even did a video previously on, Rage Wars, Evolution, and the reboot. But there is a series of Turok games that no one ever talks about, and they are great. They are genuinely great. And I'm not talking about that weird cutesy isometric game. There's actually another series of Turok games that are so good, and this is what this video is all going to be about. So we're just going to go through the handheld games in release order, starting off with the very first one that came out the same year as the first Turok game on the Nintendo 64, Turok Battle for the Dinosaurs. I've got physical copies of all of these games because I just do. So just a quick retcon. The game's actually called Turok Battle for the Biosaurs. I couldn't read that on the actual cartridge, but biosaurs, not dinosaurs. So this was the first handheld game released on the Game Boy, the original Game Boy, in 1997. It was developed by Bit Managers and published by Acclaim Entertainment. It's pretty much the same as the cartridge one. As you can see here, I was having a little bit of trouble with the capture on the because I've been playing this through the GameCube, so I was just having a tiny bit of trouble with the capture there. So, like with the first Turok game on the Nintendo 64, you sort of play as Tao Set, or Turok, and who is the time-traveling warrior himself. And you just sort of like have to go through. It's a nice little action platformer. I really like these sort of sprites that they use in the artwork, and the art design is really cool. And for a Game Boy game, it runs really smooth and just really bad at the game, as you can see. Just love jumping off cliffs. But once you get into the game, it's very fun. It's quite hard. And they just don't make games like this hard anymore, but I'm always really impressed with the animations, like the little hanging onto the edge animation. I think it's really cool. I think it's something you don't see, especially for a 1997 game. I also really like how fluid the animation of the sprite is, and how like when he jumps, there's this like floatiness to him, and yeah, you can't always see what you're jumping into. That is a bit of a problem as you go through the game, but it is more or less, for like first go at an action platformer, it's pretty good. Now, as a kid, I didn't play this game as much as I played some of the other games in the sort of the handheld franchise, but I did have this game on my original Game Boy. Still got the cartridge, as you just saw, and it's really like nostalgic just for me to go through it again. And like, I think as a child I must have been some sort of like super brain kid, because this game is so hard. If you're going to play it now, be prepared for how unforgiving this game is. Like, I've played a lot of games, especially a lot of older games, even like Mega Man. This is way harder, and I don't know why. I don't know whether it's because like the enemies just hit you in ways that you just are not expecting it, or just that the controls are a little bit like strange, or that it's just a Game Boy title, and Game Boy titles were just notoriously very hard. Well, for me at least. But yeah, be prepared. If you go back and play this game, it is hard. Cue all the comments of everyone just saying that it's not hard and I'm just an idiot. But, you know, subjective, innit? So unlike other games in the handheld series, this is the one that takes the story is the most similar to the console release. So in this one, it sort of follows the same sort of campaign, where there's the evil overlord known as the Campaigner, who's the villain in the first game, who is controlling the area. He's an evil warlord, and you've got to take him down. He's got a whole host of like mercenaries and like dinosaurs and like monsters. I don't know what else I can really say. It's Turok. You ever played the first one? It's pretty simple. It's a time-traveling Indian. What more can I say? But seriously, check this game out if you ever get the chance. It's really fun, but it is very hard. Next up, we're going to talk about my favourite Turok handheld game, which is Turok 2 Seeds of Evil on the original Game Boy. So just over a year later, in 1998, Turok Seeds of Evil, or Turok 2 Seeds of Evil, was released on the Game Boy and Game Boy Color. And I absolutely love this game. This is one of my favourite Game Boy games ever. Can we just take a moment just to really appreciate the music of this game? Just listen to this. Honestly, the music is so good in this game. I absolutely love it. Like, this song playing in the background lives rent-free in my head. I play it like all the time, sometimes just to myself. I think I even have this soundtrack album on my phone just to listen to every now and again. In terms of gameplay, it is very similar to the first one. It's a little bit easier. It starts off in a city, which is not anything really to do with the first Turok game. You don't start in Galnea, you don't start in Dinosaur World, you just start in a city and there are weird mutant people running around. You just gotta like beat them up to start off with. Now the first level is punishing, but it's one of them sort of like you get used to it and you just have to get good. Like, that's just what these games were back then. They were made incredibly hard just so you had to get through it and memorize the game. So the game was developed by Bit Managers again, and also published by Acclaim Entertainment again, and uses much of the same art assets and graphics as the first game, but in my opinion they've crisped them up a little bit. They've just made them a little bit more fluid, and you have the added benefit of everything now being in colour, and it looks awesome. Like, I think it looks really good in all this like colour. You can play this both on the original Game Boy and the Game Boy Color if you want the extra sort of the colours to the game, and it is a little bit easier if you play it in colours because there are certain puzzles in this game that rely on colour. Just for, like, you know, if you're planning on playing this game, play it on a Game Boy Color, not on a Game Boy Original, because some of the puzzles are just impossible otherwise. Now, I used to play this game all the time. I think this was one of the first Game Boy games I ever had, like, to myself. I'm pretty sure when I got my Game Boy, I had Super Mario World, Super Mario Land, the Golden Coins, this, and I'm fairly certain the following, like the Christmas coming up, I got Pokemon Red. So those were like my first 4 Game Boy games I just played all the time. Oh, I also had like another game that was like Quest for Camelot, which was based on like a DreamWorks film. Weird game. I think I've still got that somewhere. I might hunt that out because movie tie-in games are always interesting. But yeah, I played this all the time. This was like, for me, this was so good because at the time my brother had the Nintendo 64 and he would be playing Turok 2 on the Nintendo 64, and then I would have this on my Game Boy as if I was like playing along with him, because you know, you're a little bit of an idiot when you're the younger brother and you believe what you're doing makes a difference. So yeah, this was a great game. I highly recommend this to anyone that is a Game Boy enthusiast because it's so good, it's so fun, and I just 100% recommend this game. Thirdly, a lesser known gem on the console, well, on the Game Boy Color, is the Game Boy Color exclusive Turok 3 Shadows of Oblivion. Yeah, it got its own release on the Game Boy Color, which is pretty cool. Again, just to clarify, when I said it was an exclusive, I meant it was an exclusive to the Game Boy Color and you could not play it on a original Game Boy. So that's what I meant by that. Obviously it came out on the console. But what I did want to say is this game is so different to the actual console game. It is more or less another game. For example, look at this. You start off in a tank. You have no choice of what Turok you play as, like in the console one you can choose between the guy and the girl, but in this it's just, no, you're a tank and you just gotta, like, that's just how it starts. It's a strong opening as a tank, and the game sort of flips between them sideways like action platformer and this like top down sort of isometric tank view, vehicle control, as you should say. I don't really know what to call this, but yeah, it's all right. This one's, I didn't play this one as much as everything else because I actually got this game way after it came out. I think I had this game when I first had my Game Boy Advance even. So yeah, that's just a little bit of an example of the switch in gameplay, how it's just gone to this sort of like platformer, but it's not like the other platformers because you've got more range of vision, and it's just an onslaught of just killing as many enemies as you can. It's a bit strange, and it's very hard as well because some of the enemies are very broken in terms of how they just gang up on you and gank you. But once again, this game was developed by Bit Managers and was published by Acclaim, and it came out in the year 2000, so it was quite late in the Game Boy and Game Boy Color sort of life cycle. I think at the same time it had the unfortunate problem of releasing a couple of weeks before Pokemon Crystal came out, so it didn't really get much of a chance. Don't quote me on that though, I can't quite remember when Pokemon Crystal came out. So yeah, it's basically the same as the other games, but this time it's more of a top-down view. You progress through the game and you take control of Turok, but this time you don't really know what Turok you're playing as, and you just go through a series of levels much like this where you just wipe out enemies. You get loads of different weapons in it, and yeah, that's pretty much it. This game's alright, I would recommend this one as well. Probably the weakest out of them, not out of the handheld games, but it's still alright, it's doable, it's passable. And weirdly enough, what also got its own release is Turok Rage Wars on the Game Boy Color, exclusively on the Game Boy Color. Well, not exclusively, it was also on Nintendo 64, but yeah, we'll go into that one next. Again, this game was developed by Bit Managers and published by Acclaim. Released in 1999, so it did actually come out before the Turok 3 Game Boy Color game. And I think this one is probably the worst out of all of them. It's very fast paced, it's a bit boring, and not a lot really happens in this one. It uses the same art assets as Turok 2 and 1, but it is just quicker. I don't know how to explain this one, it's just not very good, this one, but honestly it is fun. And finally, the last game that we have is Turok Evolution. The actually is a better version than the console game, but we'll go into that now. So unlike all the other games on this list, this one was actually developed and published by Acclaim. It wasn't handed out to Bit Manager or anything like that. So this was just an in-house developed game, and in my opinion is far better than the console port. For example, this one is actually finished and has a story that's completely different, but it is really fun. Now, what I will say about this game is an absolute shameless rip-off of Metal Slug. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either, because it has some really defined gameplay that's like sort of hard to master, but once you do, it's very good. Now, as you can see here, we're just going through, like, it gives you a little bit of story at the beginning, some sort of storyboards, which is something that was actually missing from the console version as well, so you actually know what's going on in this game, which I really liked. But the story is completely different to the console version. Now, unlike all the other games on this, once you start this game, you get the choice between these two people. You can play as Talset, who is Turok, or some other guy who has a crazy mustache. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Once you start the game, it is a side-scrolling shoot-'em-up in the style of Metal Slug. Now, what I do love about this game, the sound design and everything like that is really good. Like, it sounds great, it looks great, it's quick, and as you can see, like, it just screams Metal Slug, really. You've got like a weapon reel, which is really cool. You have a tomahawk, you have like, it's just really well thought out. This game is, I wouldn't be surprised if this game was meant to be something else, and then they would just tacked on a Turok, like a Turok skin to it, because it seems almost too good for the Turok series, and that's really saying something. Like, just mowing down enemies here. Now, the one thing I will say as well, despite what you're watching on the screen at the moment, this game is so hard. Like, this guy, this dinosaur here can do one, because he is impossible to kill. If you don't know what you're doing, he is so hard to kill, and if there's no checkpoints in this game, I should point out, so you have to start the level again. For that to be the first dinosaur you come across who just absolutely wipes you off the planet every time you get up close to him. Yeah, but honestly, this is one of the best games out of the handheld series, and I would recommend this completely to anyone that wants to have a go at this game, but it is different to all the others, that's all I would say. Anyway, thank you so much for watching me ramble about weird dinosaur games on, like, throughout the ages. I love all of these games, they've been fantastic. I don't think Turok's a weird series for me, because obviously I know that they're not that good as they go on. Like Evolution, not a good game, but I love it. I still play it, like, far too often for such a terrible game. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, guys, and don't forget, if you're new to the channel, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be plenty more sort of retro gaming videos. I'm going to put out as much as I can. But thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.